they know that we don't see it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just give me 1 second.
Oh, yeah, I had questions for him too.
Sweet.
Okay. All right, we are ready to begin. Are we in open session now? Okay, great. Yes. Yes. Test. Okay. Welcome everyone to the December 12th, 2023 regular meeting of the San Francisco Elections Commission. I'm the President, Robin Stone. The time is now 6:05 p.m. and I call the meeting to order. Before we proceed further, I would like to ask Commission Secretary Marisa Davis to briefly explain some procedures for participating in today's meeting.
President Stone. The minutes of this meeting will reflect that this meeting is being held in person at City Hall, room 400, 1 Dr. Carlton B. Goodlett Place, San Francisco, and remotely via WebEx. As authorized by the Elections Commission February 15, 2023 vote, members of the public may attend the meeting to observe and provide public comment either at the physical meeting location or remotely on the Commission's website and on today's agenda. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak, 6 minutes if you are on the line with an interpreter. When providing public comment, you are encouraged to state your name clearly. Once your 3 minutes have expired, staff will thank you and you will be muted. Please address your comments to the entire commission and not to a specific individual. While providing public comment remotely, please ensure that you are in a quiet location. When joining by phone, you will hear a beep when you are connected to the meeting. You will be automatically muted and in listening mode only. To make a public comment, dial *3 to raise your hand when your item of interest comes up. You will be added to the public comment line. You will hear you have raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait. If at any time you change your mind and wish to withdraw yourself from public comment line, press *3 again. You will hear the system say you have lowered your hand. When joining by WebEx or a web browser, make sure the participant's side panel is showing by clicking on the participant's icon. At the bottom of the list of attendees is a small button or an icon that looks like a hand. Press the hand icon to raise your hand. You will be unmuted when it is your time to comment. When you are done with your comment, click the hand icon again to lower your hand. In addition to participating in real time, interested persons are encouraged to participate in this meeting by submitting public comment in writing by 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting to elections.commission@sfgov.org. It will be shared with the commission. This meeting is concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Thank you, President Stone.
Thank you. Secretary Davis, will you please proceed with item 1, commission roll call?
President Stone.
Present.
Vice President Giordano.
Here.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dye.
Here.
Commissioner Hayden Crowell.
Here. Here. Here.
So the 6 members present.
Thank you. I realized I did not ask anyone in advance to do the land acknowledgement. Would anyone like to volunteer to take that responsibility today who hasn't in a while? Okay, Vice President Giordano, go for it.
Just going to pull it up here. I found it. The San Francisco Elections Commission acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, or the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land, and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors and relatives of the Ramaytush community and affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples.
Thank you, Vice President Jordanek. That closes out item number 1. Let's move to item number 2, general public comment. Apologies. General public comment on any issue within the Elections Commission's general jurisdiction that is not covered by another item on this agenda.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, yes, I didn't hear anything other than that we were starting public comment. Is it my turn? Still can't hear anything. This is Brent Turner. It seems I've been unmuted, but I'm not hearing anything.
Mr. Turner, are you able to hear me?
I can.
Okay, just bear with us for one moment. We're going to get the public comment section set up.
Thank you.
Secretary Davis, would you mind moving your microphone closer to your mouth? Yeah, thank you. Mr. Turner, you can start.
Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Brent Turner. I wanted to make mention that I had a recent experience up in Shasta County that I wanted to share with the commission. In Shasta County, for those of you that have not been following it, there has been a great amount of upset. It's a Republican-controlled Board of Supervisors that have taken a look at Dominion and decided they did not want to proceed in association with Dominion. So they decided to go to a hand count. And now my understanding is the governor has created a law whereby the hand counting will be disallowed. So they're caught without a system to use. Hart InterCivic apparently has shown up to take care of the tabulation piece, but you've got an interesting dynamic where both the Republicans and the Democrats are very upset. The Democrats, a lot of them, along with the Republicans, want hand counting, but I went up to explain that if the Secretary of State would be so bold and so appropriate as to allow a pilot of the open source voting system that both New Hampshire and Mississippi are now using in real elections, that would be a great benefit to the state as well as the country. So we're hoping that that occurs. It's an interesting situation. I reminded them that Christine Pelosi and myself put open source voting in the Democratic Party state platform, and we have an alignment now. Both sides of the aisle agree that this is a good solution. So thank you to San Francisco for your work. Hopefully we can start competing with the likes of Mississippi and New Hampshire in the future regarding open source voting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Secretary Davis. That closes agenda item number 2. Let's move to agenda item number 3, approval of previous meeting minutes. Discussion and possible action on previous Elections Commission meeting minutes. So I'll just kick this off quickly. There are 3 sets of meeting minutes. The September meeting minutes I am resurfacing. If folks recall, or let me refresh folks' memory that we had briefly touched on the meeting minutes for the September meeting. During the October meeting, Commissioner Dye had shared some feedback. The commissioners had shared that they had not had time to review the feedback. And so the directive for myself was to review them. And if they weren't material edits or points of feedback or changes, that I could, just approve and we would move forward. But if they were more substantial changes that weren't just kind of text, like word choices or spelling errors, that I should bring it back before the commission. And so I finally had the opportunity to go through it. And there were a couple of areas that were more substantial. And so I felt that it was, I wanted to follow the direction of the commission and bring it back and make sure folks had the opportunity to weigh in. This does not speak to like agreement or disagreement with the comments. It's more just trying to follow what folks had asked me to do. So that's why you see those, oh, let's make sure that he's. Okay, so that is why they're on here. And then there are the October and November meeting minutes as well, which Commissioner Dye also shared feedback on. I recognize that people may have had quite a lot to read ahead of this meeting today. And so these minutes are drafted and therefore we are, we could postpone reviewing and approving until the next meeting if folks would like more time. That's totally okay since we now have them drafted and on our website. So that was my intro and I will leave it to commissioners. And let's follow the process of using our screens here to raise hands and follow Robert's rules, if folks don't mind. Yeah.
Commissioner Burnholz just joined.
Wonderful. Welcome, Commissioner Burnholz. Okay. Any comments from the commission? Yes, Vice President Jordanek.
Yeah, thank you, President Stone. I just had one question on the edits, Commissioner Dye, regarding the public comment from Jen Say. Did Jen make the point about it not being limited to Chinese candidates, or was that something that you were commenting on?
This is in the public comment after.
For the September 20th?
Oh, okay, this is on page, oh, no,
Page
page
4?
numbers. Oh, page 4, yeah. Yes, she is the one who pointed out that that it's not just Chinese candidates that have Chinese names. But I just provided that explanation in case people didn't understand that comment.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Did folks have time to review these or would you like to postpone until January? Should I suggest that we postpone until January? Commissioner Hayden Crowley, yes.
Did you have issues?
I'm sure you read them.
Yes, I mean, I too had the question about Jen Say. I also felt that perhaps I didn't agree with necessarily all the positioning. I also didn't feel that I should make that decision unilaterally and would feel more comfortable if other commissioners opined.
I move that we delay the approval of the minutes to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Point of, I don't know what, I need a new chair. It's falling apart over.
Oh. Point of
Here, have
personal
privilege.
Okay. Vice President Jordanek, I had seen your name. Okay. Commissioner Parker.
This is actually just a point of clarification. It's not necessarily a direct comment. I did read all of the minutes and I'm fine delaying them, but more, I know we, a few meetings ago, talked about minutes and as we're doing, sort of our procedure, and it just reading through these and kind of the style of different minutes, and knowing that even also within our committee minute styles, it might be useful, even if we just have a memo from you or something or whatever, just to have consistency on how we want to approach minutes, on whether they're summaries, how we want to handle public comments. For instance, I sometimes feel uncomfortable summarizing public comments and would prefer we just do a transcription of a public comment, but it might be useful to do a refresher on how we want to handle minutes, so that as we are making suggested edits or approving, that we are consistent.
Commissioner Dye?
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Parker. I did notice the style was quite different between some of these minutes. We've kind of gone to a more succinct style where we really focus on the decisions and actions with limited detail and discussion. And it seemed like some of these minutes went into quite a bit of detail, but only on some things. So I kind of agree that some kind of style guide would be helpful so that there's more consistency between our minutes. The other thing that I noted is sometimes there's information that was not discussed at the meeting. It's something that happened after the meeting, which I think minutes should reflect what happened at the meeting and not introduce new information. Yeah.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley?
Thank you, President Stone. I'm a fan of succinct minutes, and I also think we have a recording of the meeting, and that it's best not to interpret things because it is let other people take a look at the recording instead of trying to summarize it. And there's always going to be a reflection of personal bias, no matter how hard you try to be straightforward. And I think it's best to leave that to a recording and do regular minutes that record actions. That would be my recommendation.
Commissioner Dye, actually, Commissioner LaBolsi hasn't had the chance. Apologies. I did that before. I should have asked before Commissioner Hayden Crowley spoke again. Did you have comment? Okay. Commissioner Dye?
Yeah, I just had one more thought, which is we were informed by a member of the public that the Sunshine Ordinance actually requires us to list every member of the public who spoke, include their names if they included or if they are known to us, and also provide a brief summary of the substance of what they said. So that's actually a requirement.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback. So I'm going to just jump in here. So I did provide some guidance on this in the Roberts rules, actually, which I did much earlier this year. And there's actually like a subsection on the minutes. And then also DCA Flores added some additional context around public comment, which is all we are required to do is provide the name if we have it, and then a brief description of whether there was support or opposition to whatever the commission was discussing. So I don't think we need to overthink it. I too recognize that there may be bias, but I also think that sometimes this commission gets a little, dare I say, trying to be detailed about the minutes in a way that is superfluous. Like, I don't think it's necessary. And I think I also think that this perhaps, I'm not sure what is meant by the style, but changing, but I also think some of that may have to do with the fact that our secretary has changed and I'm not doing the minutes on my own anymore. Secretary Davis helps much more than does the first stab, and I review. So before, the process was different. I think it's okay if it doesn't look exactly the same, but the general basis of the process we should follow is included in the Roberts rules. I'm happy to pull that out and also ask DCI Flores to add a line with the exact example. I think that should be pretty easy, and I'm happy to provide that for the January meeting so we can go through all of this. But I from past experience with this commission, I think we do get a little hung up on the minutes. The important thing is just making sure we get the actions and general discussion and and the names of commenters if we have it. One caveat to that is just to say I'm not comfortable adding people's names who did not provide their names. And so I have seen at some points feedback about changing, like adding a last name where perhaps the member of the public did not provide their last name. And I don't think that's necessarily appropriate either. So that perhaps could be something we have DCA Flores weigh in on as well. And I'm happy to ask her to opine offline ahead of the January meeting if folks agree. Okay. So it sounds like we'll review those minutes in January. I'll also take it as my responsibility to put a little one-sheeter together of the minutes. And we'll also try and get that posted on the website as well. So folks are comfortable. Yes. I apologize. Do we have a second?
Second.
The motion is to postpone the discussion on the meeting minutes until January 24, and it's seconded by Commissioner Lavolsi. If folks don't have any other comments, let's move to public comment. Okay, let's move to public comment. Excellent. So Secretary Davis, will you take the vote, the roll call vote?
No.
Commissioner Parkers, can you say that again?
I was looking at the screen and it does look like there's a public commenter hand up, is there not? Okay, because I can't see fully here, just from here, it looked like it was a hand. Yeah?
There is a hand raised. Okay. Just bear with us for a moment. Is that who you see on your end?
Yeah, it's not a slash. Did you click refresh? Have you tried clicking refresh? Oh, it's gone now.
Clicked it, that's why it's gone.
I show no hands raised.
Why don't we unmute Mr. Turner and see if he intended to have his hand raised?
Mr. Turner, did you
No, I'm sorry. I think that's a leftover from the initial public comment.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying, and thank you, Secretary Davis. Okay, let's move back to the commission vote.
President Stone?
Yes.
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 Yes, Commissioner Burke.
Looks like her audio is not working, I think.
We can come back to Commissioner Reynolds.
I can hear you. I can't hear the secretary.
Oh, you can't hear Secretary Davis?
Sorry. So my vote is yes.
Thank you.
You have to put your microphone close, turn off.
It might be that your microphone.
I don't think it's on.
Okay,
Your mic.
hold on. Secretary Davis, would you mind just making sure that your screen, the mic at the bottom right where that button is, will you just press to make sure the mic is on? It doesn't sound like it's on. I will be right there. Just bear with me. Test. That should be better. Maybe it's just talking a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
After Burnholes.
We've got
Dye.
Burnholes saying yes.
Thank you, then Commissioner Dye.
And Commissioner Dye?
Aye. Thank you.
Parker? Okay, you have 7 approvals for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Davis. The motion to postpone till January plus the addition of a memo from myself with support of DCI Flores to come as well. Thank you, everyone, for that discussion. Let's move to agenda item number 4, Director's Report, discussion and possible action regarding the Director's Report. So I'll again just intro this very briefly and then hand it over to everyone else. So as you can see, Director Arntz was unable to attend today for personal reasons, but I spoke with him at length ahead of the meeting today, and actually I spoke with him at length last week, ensured we had a director's report to review even in his absence. So hopefully folks had the opportunity to read that, and also shared the appendix regarding the Chinese characters and candidate names as well. And so the go forward plan for this report and making sure we can get questions answered by the director will be, let's just talk as if the director is here. And what I will do is listen to the conversation, take scrupulous notes, and then centralize all of the questions for the director and share them with him when he is back from his personal matter. So I hope that works for everyone. If you have concerns, definitely share them, but I will make sure to do my best to reflect all of that and then ensure that we get folks answers as well. Okay, so with that, I will hand it over to all of you to ask questions and make comments. Vice President Jordanek.
Yeah, thank you, President Stone. I just had a couple questions to ask the director about the report. The first was at the last meeting, I had asked the director if he could think about the open source voting policy priority that we adopted back in September. And because one part of that priority was to conduct outreach before the budget process. And since the budget process is coming up quickly, I wanted to see if there's any chance that he would be able to start that process, part of it. And part of it is because if after conducting outreach, he learns that some organizations say, oh, we could, do something for you if, for X amount of money, or maybe it would cost no money, that we would know that going into the budget process. And then the second one was, I just had some questions about the naming policy, which is a very interesting issue. And it was sort of an open-ended question regarding, in his memo, he says it's to address concerns regarding the potential abuses of the names. And I'm wondering if, even though there's this 2-year requirement, if it could still be open to abuse, because someone could, choose a name 2 years before they run, and then would that issue still be present? And I'm wondering if they want to conform exactly to state law, or are they open to doing a variation on the state law? So that's all.
Thank you, Vice President Jordanek. Commissioner Dye.
Yeah, I had just a couple of questions. One was on the grants. There were 13 organizations. I was just curious if the total grant amount was just divided equally, or if some got more, and why. Also, there was a comment about the mixed media campaign. And I was wondering why AAPI folks were not targeted and what the thinking was behind that. There's a mention of the HAVA money, which is interesting. I was just curious about how the allocation was done for San Francisco. It sounds like it was set at the state level. So was it based on our needs? Was it based on our population? I'm just curious about that process. And yeah, interestingly enough, to follow up on Vice President Juranic's comment on transliterated names, yeah, I was curious about having more of the background on that too. There is a very much an art to choosing an Asian name. Names have a lot of meaning, and so if you don't have a good consultant, you might pick something that might mean something you don't want it to mean, or have a connotation that might be negative. So that's what the concern about abuse is, and so I was. Yeah, I just wanted to know more about that and whether it sounds like the candidates have to prove that they were using it and what's involved in that. If someone wants to change their name, if it's the name that they want to go forward with, we don't ask other people to prove that they're using their names. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting policy.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think Vice President Juranic, maybe you also know a little bit more, and perhaps DCA Flores, who I know probably supported Director Arndt's, just as it pertains to that. And I don't know if this was already a part of what you were saying, so apologies if I'm just re-explaining something you already know, but I do know the context is that Supervisor Connie Chan specifically expressed concern that it was being used as cultural appropriation. That was what the reporting said, that it was used for cultural appropriation by folks who perhaps were not, were using it to create a different type of name rather than specifically in trying to brand themselves in a specific type of way. But perhaps DCA Flores can share a little bit more light, but also Commissioner Dye, I don't know if that was what you were saying also in terms of context, but was it? Because I don't want to
No, I mean, I didn't have the background for that, so that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. DCA Flores, is there anything additional that you would add? Just in response to that specific question, because I feel like that we could answer without John, maybe.
I don't have anything to share. I believe this would be appropriate for the for Director Arndt's to opine and put his feedback into.
Great. Can also share the article about it if it's helpful. Commissioner Dye, were there any other questions on your end? Okay. Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, thanks for those questions so far. Just a couple of quick things. I mean, comment. I know he's not here, but it is always great to see the outreach. I appreciate the detailed, to see the variety of groups that the department is working with. So I always appreciate those lists. I was curious what the grantee training includes. All of those 13 grantees they've selected, and there's training for. So I was just more curious about what that training includes. And then the last question I had was the final item in his report that listed ways that the commissioners could be involved in outreach. And there were 3 options there. And I wondered specifically the best way to coordinate the first 2 outreach efforts listed, if that's working directly with the director or someone else, but how we might actually do those things he suggested.
Commissioners Hayden, Crowley, Lubosi, or Bernals, did you have any? I guess I will share mine then. Where are my cons? Okay. This is President Stone. I also appreciated the focus on voter registration as specifically around the commission's priorities. I like also the emphasis on the multilingual notices to the voters who did not vote in the last 5 elections. I think that's good. And the type of messaging that's being used, I appreciated that. And then I too had the question similar to Commissioner Parker around the commissioner's involvement. One thing that I specifically was thinking is there a way that we can make commitments as a body to sign up and support the department with these, perhaps in pairs or individually, perhaps in January and February. And I'm happy to reach out to the director and ask how we can do that in the best, like how we can set that up. But I think it would be great if as a body we could commit to doing that to the best that we are able, specifically around the distribution of packets and the door hangers. I think that's definitely stuff that we can help with, even in our local neighborhoods, perhaps. And then I also appreciated, I just wanted to echo Commissioner Dye's question about the HAVA funding. I hadn't thought about that question, but I want to echo that. I think I would like to know the answer to that. I'll make sure we get the answers to all these questions, but I just wanted to echo that. Any other comments about the director's report? Okay, let's move to public comment.
Mr. Turner?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, did you want to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're good to go.
Thank you. Just one quick public comment regarding the director's report. It would be great in my opinion, in the public opinion, if we could again take a good look at the upcoming process and regarding the budget. Obviously, the public has continued to complain about the relationship between Steve Bennett and the director. And so anything we can do to provide oversight to that relationship and to make sure that there is some thought going toward these less expensive election systems. My understanding is the open source systems are half the price of the Dominion system. So that would be a tremendous cost saving that could then be, that money could be used for outreach and education and so forth. So thank you for your time.
There.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Davis. That will close out agenda item number 4. I will be sure to circulate everyone's thoughtful questions to the director and make sure we get some answers to those provided to the commission. So now we will move to agenda item number 5, Commissioners' Reports. Discussion and possible action on Commissioners' Reports for topics not covered by another item on this agenda. Meetings with public officials, oversight and observation activities, long-range planning for commission activities and areas of study, proposed legislation which affect elections, and others. Vice President Juronic, would you like to start since you had a packet item?
Sure. So I have 2 things to report, and the first one I'll cover will be the one relating to the packet item. So after the retreat we had a couple weeks ago, during the retreat, we had a discussion during the Open Source Voting 101 agenda item, where we talked about the idea of the department extending San Francisco's current voting system contract instead of issuing an RFP for a few different reasons. And after the retreat, I did a little bit more research. I just wanted to look in to see what Alameda County has been doing. And I found that Alameda County's contract with Dominion Voting System is for 11 years. And so whereas ours is currently 6 years, which was for a good reason, because Alameda County has a contract for 11 years, it seems to me that, it would be wouldn't be out of the ordinary to extend it for another 2 or 3 years. So I attached to the packet that document that has that information. And the second item I wanted to mention is a few days ago, or maybe a week ago, I saw a press release from the mayor's office announcing that Linda Durrell, who's the director of the Department of Technology and the city's chief information officer, she's resigning. And that's effective, I think it's effective January 1st. And the person taking over as the interim director is the current Chief Information Security Officer, Michael Maxman, who is the person that Commissioner Bernholtz and I met with a month or two ago regarding security issues. So it doesn't directly affect us, but because it's a department that we've interacted with in the past, I thought I would just mention that. So thanks.
Thank you, Vice President Jordanek. Commissioner reports. Okay, I will give a report. Folks are welcome to raise their hand in the meantime. So a couple of things. I wanted to just give the report on the offsite and thank everyone who was able to attend. And I'll just give a brief run through that we did a tour of Pier 31 with the warehouse and then took a break. I'm sorry, we did a tour of the warehouse. We got to see the facility, see some of the technology, and spend some time meeting with folks that work at the warehouse. And then took a break, went to North Beach Public Library, where we had another couple hours of discussion, actually almost 3 hours of discussion pertaining to our strategic priority around open source voting. And then very briefly, and we heard from a guest speaker, and then very briefly talked about some strategic projects, or a strategic project. We had to abbreviate that agenda item for time's sake. I just wanted to add a huge thank you to the warehouse manager, Crispin, who did a phenomenal job walking us through the site and really getting us under the hood of how the department operates the facility on election night and prepares for elections and makes sure our technology is up to snuff. I think he did an amazing job, and also a special thanks for putting together those workflow PDFs that or workflow documents that allowed us to not only see the space, but visualize how the logistics operate on election night. It was really awesome, and I think hugely valuable. I'd love to be able to do a little bit of a tour of the vote center in City Hall. So just everyone, if you could keep that in the back of your mind for some time leading up to the November election, that I already have started talking to the director about how we can make that work. There were a lot of questions about what happens in City Hall versus what happens in Pier 31. And so I think this would kind of be the last piece of that puzzle. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to Vice President Jordanek and our speaker, Trent Lang, who did a really excellent job walking us through open source voting, the history in San Francisco, and leading a strategic discussion about how San Francisco can continue to progress toward this policy priority of the commission and the city for the last 20 plus years. And yes, there are a couple of updates I wasn't able to get to as it pertains to the strategic projects. I think I will hold off for the purposes of our discussions today, but you will see some updates to the website that Secretary Davis and I have been working on, and continued progress on the rules of order document that I shared more insight into in the offsite. So thank you folks for attending. That meeting will be uploaded onto YouTube very soon. The next update I wanted to share was about our meetings in 2024. Confirming we are on, we have our usual, third Wednesday of the month schedule, room 408, but between January and February, we may need to actually make some adjustments for a special meeting, specifically because we are required to review the department's budget. So the commission needs to adjust the schedule to accommodate having 2 meetings to review the department's 24, 25, 25, 26 budgets by February 14th. So the first meeting has to occur at least 15 days before February 14th or January 31st. And then a special meeting occurring around 31st means the department will then provide its proposed budget to the commission around January 26th. So I will follow up with folks to get that sorted before the new year, so at least get the ball rolling, knowing that we have very tight timeline. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention is, and this will come up again later in the meeting, but just a huge acknowledgement for Vice President Jordanek, who is at the end of his second term as a elections commissioner, and I think it goes without saying how fortunate we are to have had him on the body, how much, I think someone used this language earlier, I couldn't agree more, institutional knowledge he has provided, and also the level of commitment and care that he has put into his contributions. I just wanted to give a huge thank you for all of that. It's also been great working with you as a colleague. So thank you, Vice President Jordanek.
Thanks, everybody.
And that is all from me. So are there any other commissioners who would like to make comment before we move to public comment? Commissioner Hayden Crowley?
Thank you. President Stone and Vice President Jordanek, I also want to just thank you for the offsite, for organizing that, as well as to Secretary for all of the logistics that were involved. It was very interesting, the tour of Pier 31, but I actually really enjoyed going to North Beach Library. I just thought that was fantastic meeting space. It was a nice change of pace. And when you opened up the curtains on the windows and we could see the Ferris wheel, that was really wonderful. So, I mean, it's a little not on topic, but I liked it. So thank you. It was a really nice break from the usual series of meetings. Thank you for your thoughtfulness and for your planning and your strategy and so forth.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Parker?
I want to just echo a very similar thought. I know we'll have a chance to review the annual report later, but specifically related to this and the commissioner reports that Vice President Jordanek continues to provide with a level of detail, and particularly, as a newer commissioner, just making sure that there are items in this section of our meetings that should be under our consideration, just based on your experience and knowledge. So I really appreciate that there is a lot of care and thought put into those. So we've benefited. I have benefited. Thank you for that. And same thing about the retreat, President Stone. It was, I'm sure it was a lot of coordinating and effort for many people, including Secretary Davis, to put that together. It's nice to have a block of time to devote to a topic like we did with the open source voting. I know it's hard to put those kinds of things in our general meetings, and so. I know this is an unpaid commission, unlike many of the city commissions, and so this is truly a labor of love, and volunteer work. I really appreciate the effort that both of you have contributed, more than just in the last month, but in particular in the last month.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. All right, thank you. Let's move to, if no one else has any comments or reports, Let's move to public comment.
Mr. Turner.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, thank you again, commissioners, and thank you for your comments regarding Commissioner Jordanik. I wanted to just mention regarding the elongation of the current Dominion contract. I think it might benefit us greatly to also make sure that there is a good opt-out clause in that contract if it is extended, so that we can get out of the contract as well, assuming that at a certain point, some Secretary of State in California will have to stand up against Microsoft and allow the open source systems to move forward. On that note, I wanted to thank Commissioner Jordanik for his bravery and steadfastness in the face of adversity. As we know, Commissioner Jordanik had the distinction of being called out by Tucker Carlson as a bad person. So he always has that badge of distinction. And San Francisco salutes him for not only that, but for all the years of standing up for open source voting when we know that the forces are against that progress, but undaunted by lobbyist pressure or money players. The commissioner has stood strong and stood up for our democracy. So the public wants to thank him. Thank you all.
Any other public commenters?
No more public commenters.
Thank you, Secretary Davis. That closes agenda item number 5. Let's move to agenda item number 6, committee reports. Discussion and possible action on updates from the Commission's Budget and Oversight Committee, which last convened on December 7th, 2023. I will hand this to BOPEC Chair, Vice President Jordanik.
Okay, thank you, President Stone. So last Thursday, myself, Commissioner Lewalsi, and Commissioner Hayden Crowley, we held our Budget and Oversight of Public Elections Committee, the final such committee meeting of the year. And we covered a lot of a few different topics, and I'll just kind of run through the actions that we took. And I have a document in the agenda packet that lists this out. But first, we discussed the idea of, well, in the past, we've already discussed the idea of writing a letter to the appointing authority whenever there's a vacancy, and to request that they, think about the commission's diversity when they're making their appointment, and to ensure that the commission reflects the diversity of the city. So we voted to recommend to the full commission a template letter, and that's attached to this document. And it's basically almost identical to the letter that we last sent out. And then next, we discussed the annual process for evaluating the commission secretary. And as I said during the committee meeting, in my recollection, I don't think the commission has ever actually done a performance evaluation of the secretary. So we voted to recommend a process to the full commission, pending a review by the DCAs. And it's kind of like a simplified version of the process that's being proposed for the director evaluation. And then finally, we discussed the evaluation process for the director. And we discussed a proposed process that was a modified version of what the commission was using before, that took into account some of the suggestions that different commissioners have proposed over the past year or two. And that also is pending the review by the DCAs. And then the version that I attached to the packet, highlighted in yellow, are the changes that the committee made during the meeting. So over the weekend, I did forward those to the DCAs, and they did receive the email, so they're going to be reviewing those. So thank you. Or Commissioner Wolfson, Commissioner Hayden Crowley, did you have any other comments?
Do commissioners have feedback or questions on the VOPEC report? Oh, Commissioner Parker.
Thank you. This is a lot of content to get through in a meeting, so thank you for that. I do have a few questions. Regarding the vacancy letter, is there a recommended timeline for sending these letters to appointing authorities? Is that like before or after the vacancy occurs? And if before, how much in advance? Just wondering if you all had a question, thought on the timeline recommendation. And then shall I just ask? I have a few questions. Should I just do them at once? Okay. For the commission secretary review, so thank you again for the thoughtful process. And I'm wondering for this year, because it's December, what is the timeline? What would the timeline be for this year? Modified, I assume, because this would be new if we approve this. And then a second question was related to one of the questions suggested, which is how is your time spent? Essentially that. I was just curious about the purpose of that question. It seems more like a manager direct report conversation, but not necessarily an evaluative question. So I just wondered if there was some intent and purpose behind that you'd be willing to share. And then related to the director evaluation, just a few things I appreciate based on past conversations we've had. I appreciate your inclusion of input from folks who have different visibility into the director's work than we do as commissioners. And I look forward to determining which of those ways might be most appropriate and useful for us to use, of course, under guidance from DCA Flores. And I also appreciated the recommendation of localizing the bulk of the review to one meeting, to try to not have it spread out over many, many meetings. I appreciate that suggestion. Also appreciate the suggestion for the visibility, like CCing the VP and delivering things and filing forms to have, a long-term record, institutional record for us related to that. And then related to my first question there in number C, in the questions, this around measuring effective administration. Again, we have limited visibility into that. And so I wonder, there's some criteria that we can do and some we don't. Like we can say our election's functional and maybe that's a result of having a functional that's having effective administration, that might be the result. We could say that that's the result, but also there are other ways to tell, but for instance, it just feels very difficult to not include in the criteria listed under that question some sort of staff evaluation of whether there's effective administration in the department. Even though it was referenced earlier in the document, I just wondered if there was criteria that could be included there that made it clear we need to have some kind of visibility in order to really answer that question, in my opinion, but others may disagree. And that's it. Those are my questions. Thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Parker. I guess we'll go to Commissioner Dye. I don't know if you want to come back, answer the questions as we go. Let's have Commissioner Dye, and then, or if you're keeping track of, if you don't mind. Also, just to confirm, we are recording the meeting, correct? Okay, great. Sorry. All right, Commissioner Dye.
Thank you. Thank you, President Stone. And thanks to all the members of VOPEC for putting in additional time to go through this. I appreciate the thoroughness of all of the items that were included in the packet. I do think a couple things I just wanted to highlight that I thought were important about filing the form with the with DHR, which I think has been a challenge before, because we even were challenged finding past information because the commission itself has had challenges with institutional memory. So I think that's a great idea. One other suggestion is making sure that we're aligning with the best practices recommended by DHR for evaluation, so that we're kind of not off doing our own thing when the rest of the city is abiding by other best practices for evaluation. So maybe adding a step that we check in with DHR before we do these evaluations, I think would be great. And in line with that, I love that you included the 360-degree review. That's something that's pretty typical in the private sector and maybe addresses some of the issues that Commissioner Parker brought up, things that are very difficult for us as an oversight body that meets once a week, once a month to actually assess ourselves. And I suspect that there may be, again, standard DHR practices and how to conduct that, which would be the most appropriate other division heads to speak to, employee survey data that may be done for every department that maybe we could get access to so that we're not kind of recreating the wheel. And then the only other item that I wanted to call out was in the form for the director's evaluation. I assume this is going to be a generic one. On page 3, it just mentions Director Arntz by name. So I'm assuming we should just change it to the director, since at some point it might be a different director. And that's all I had.
Wait, what was the one you just said?
In the actual, I'm assuming this will be a generic evaluation form for the director. It actually mentions him by name, so I would just take it out.
Can you, Commissioner Dye, can you point us to where you're referring to?
Yes, it's on
Oh, I
page
see,
3,
Page 3.
in the first paragraph.
Operations elections.
Correct.
1. Thank you. If folks don't have other comments, I will add mine. I also noticed the piece about the filing with DHR. I'm not sure that, I from my memory, I don't believe that that was something available to us as an option last time. So I'd be curious if that's even something they would do for us. I'd want to confirm. And then the other piece I had feedback on was regarding the timing for the policy priorities. And this is more of a discussion that I'd be interested to hear folks' feedback on, but we said after the document proposes after the evaluation process is complete, the commission should start discussing priorities for the next year. And I wonder if it's necessary to postpone that, especially if the meeting, let's say, ideally it doesn't go beyond one meeting, but as we learned from this year's review, it has potential to spill over. So do folks have concerns with it running concurrently? So establishing priorities, yes, in the ideal sense, but, in a organization where we're all working full time and we're talking about a manager direct report relationship, ideally you would do one, close out the report and then establish new goals. But understanding that we don't operate that way, I'm wondering if it's necessary for that to be after the review is complete. So I'd be interested to hear people's feedback on that, or if we could just list that as a concurrent initiative, or even just add some language that says ideally, depending on timing, or something that loosens that a little bit. And then one other item that isn't necessarily specific to the items discussed in this report, but I would like to propose it for the next BOPEC, is when we do the budget review for the department, I'd like to ask that we potentially propose funds to allocate toward digitizing the records that I mentioned in the offsite, and I've mentioned a couple other meetings. Secretary Davis has already begun doing some research on this, of looking into partners that we could use that are already city approved. She also talked to the director about it, so that we could take the files that are in those cabinets down in the department and get them organized, digitized and organized, and add those to our website as well. So that's more just FYI, would like BOPEC in Q1 to address that matter. Oh, and sorry, there was one other one. I agree with also the change to the letter to the appointing authorities, and think it is correct. If no one has any other comments, I will hand it back to BOPEC chair and committee members to weigh in on the feedback. Oh. Vice President Giordani.
Okay, thank you all for your comments and questions. So I took notes, but let me know if I missed a question. Regarding the timing of the vacancy letter, I think that's a great point. And I think we were more just focusing on the letter itself. So if the commission were to develop a policy for sending a letter, I think it would be good for the commission to decide when they want to send the letter. Yeah, because it may make the better sense to send it, before the terms have actually ended. And then maybe you want to send a reminder letter if they don't do it after 6 months. On the secretary evaluation, as far as the first question about how the time is being spent, yeah, that's a good point. It's not so much a part of the evaluation, but I think for commissioners who, other than the president, who are not managing the secretary day to day, I think it will help the commissioners to get a better sense for how the time is being spent. And I think it's more to help the other commissioners have the context for the evaluation. So maybe it could be like broken out as a, maybe just a contextual question instead of evaluation itself. On the director evaluation, the administration questions. Well, let me first say the evaluation form is pretty much identical to the questions we had before with a couple higher level changes. We divided into 2 sections, operations and then policies. And then the operations are evaluated separately, and then the policies are evaluated separately. And we kind of wanted to remove the tension of what's more important, administration or policies. So they're kind of each evaluated independent of one another. And then as far as the administration category, that's always been a tricky category for the commission, because you're right, it's hard for the commission to have real visibility into that aspect. And these criteria were also copied over from the previous questions. And going back to like 2016, I think we didn't even have the criteria along with the category. So those were added later, and that was an attempt for the commission to try to, how do you measure these different categories? And I think the thing about commissioner observation and perception is a recognition that we don't really have true objective ways of measuring the administration. So it's more about, the most we can really do is based off our perceptions. So, but I think if there is a more objective way for the commission to have insight into that, I think it would be great to solve that issue. In terms of the timing of setting the new priorities, I think that's a great point. I think part of this, including this, was just to make sure that it is a part of the evaluation process. We do want to kind of renew the policy priorities. And yeah, I think it could make more sense to start that earlier, so that, there's a more, when the evaluation is done, you already have the policies for the next year in place. So so these are really just recommended from the committee, and I think the commission will have another chance to fine tune things. Was there anything else, Commissioner Dye? Did I address your questions to?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that step about checking in with, to make sure that the commission's process is aligned with DHR's best practices. Because that's what we learned last time, is that basically our process is totally divorced from whatever DHR does. And I'm not sure that's a good idea because, you know, HR professionals are keeping up with the state of the art and what's the best way to, you know, evaluate and get the, you know, best work out of employees. And, you know, we're kind of out here in the wilderness doing it once every year. You know, none of us, you know, occasionally, I guess we might get an HR professional among us, but that's really not our strength. And we should be able to leverage the city's expertise in this.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we didn't do like a thorough, you know, along the lines you mentioned. I know Commissioner Hayden Crowley, I think you did reach out to someone in DHR for some aspect of the.
Maybe it was DHR. Yeah, that was one of my recommendations, was to have the DCA take a. Oh,
Is your microphone on?
is that? Okay.
Yeah, you can pull it
Was
closer.
to have the DCA review our recommendations, because I did think about it in the context of what DHR uh, uh, requirements are, and also both the secretary and the director are represented in collective bargaining units, so that the DCA would be able to provide some recommendations and insight into that, because the director is part of MEA, and the secretary, I think, would be part of IFPTE, I think is who it is. Not totally positive about that. But that's a big reason why the DCA has to take a look at all of this. There's also budget considerations. I know that there was a mention of the 360, and that was something that we talked about. I have to go back and take a look at who I spoke with, but that is something that DHR does do. However, there's a cost associated with it. So if it's something that you want to do, then you have to budget for it. And you also have to keep in mind that the department, just as all departments were asked to cut 3%, and I believe that another 10% is being asked of the departments. So some of I mean, it's good to keep this on the record, because then when things do change, and I think they will change, I think it's starting to change already. I see it when I go to work. So hopefully we'll start to see tax revenues go back up. But right now is a very difficult time for the city. So I don't know how much we can expect in terms of additional support. I think we have to prioritize and figure out, digitizing things. 360 reports probably can't do it all. But I do think the DCA, we should count on them for their input on, and maybe their relationships too with DHR, for further feedback on the direction that we're going.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden Crowley. Commissioner Dye.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't implying that you guys should, you know, look at DHR regulations and incorporate them in here, merely that you add a step that we check in with DHR and have them review our process and make recommendations. Maybe, you know, that's something that's done a month before this gets started every year, that we just make sure the process is refreshed and consistent with whatever best practices that DHR has instituted for normal employee reviews and assessments for every other employee in the city. So less of kind of a legal compliance, collective bargaining check, more of just incorporating best practices. And same thing on the 360. I mean, they may use a third party for doing that. And the concept of 360 isn't like a specific, you know, methodology, as much as saying that we talk to, you know, the director's peers, the director's, you know, reports, et cetera, so that we consider feedback from a lot of different sources that have different kinds of power relationships, if you will, with the director. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that we make this a budget line item, just that's something, even if it's just that the leadership of the commission has a couple of conversations with a few other departments that, interact with the Department of Elections a lot and work with the director closely. That's more information than we have now.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
I just do want to add that I think those are good suggestions. With as far as DHR is concerned, I wouldn't wait till a month before. They, with all due respect, they move a little bit more slowly than they're a big group, and they have a lot of, let's just say they have a lot on their plate. So if this is a concern, and I'm really hoping that the DCA can weigh in on it, I would certainly move to have the DHR take a look at anything that we want to be considered sooner rather than later.
Vice President Giordani.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to point out that for the director evaluation process, the number 2 has a sort of a step where 3 months before the evaluation is conducted, the commission is able to kind of check in with each other and say, is there anything special or different we want to do, add something we didn't do the last year. And that could be a time where you do that check-in with DHR. So, which will give you 3 months.
Commissioner Parker.
Just to capture question that I asked about this commission secretary review, the timeline, what that would be for this year, if you had the answer.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, exactly. I think it would make sense for this year to do it, whenever you can, it could be February if the commission has time. But this was kind of assuming that, once it gets going, you can be on a regular schedule, so that the first time could be an exception.
Okay, this is President Stone. So what are the next steps here? Sounds like there's some feedback. I know that we're also waiting on input from the DCA / the labor attorney. What do you recommend in terms of next steps? Are you hoping that the commission takes a vote, or? Yeah.
Well, I would say it would make sense for, once the DCAs take a look at it, for the commission to have an agenda item to discuss these processes, to vote on them, possibly making some changes based on the feedback, which could be as early as January or February. May I ask, DCA Flores, do you have any idea of how long it would take for these documents to be reviewed?
I do not. But I can't imagine it'll take 6 months. I think a reasonable time frame is 1 to 2 months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, Vice President Jordanik, is it okay to ask that before your last hurrah on this commission, depending on when that may be, because I know it's still possible that you would be on the body in January, that you just maintain that check-in with the DCA, and that when you are officially rolling off the commission, you hand that over to president, or yes, I guess president at the time. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Great. Any other comments or feedback from Commissioner LaVolsi or Commissioner Bernholz? Yes, Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
I just scrolled through my email to see who I did talk to at DHR, and that would be Kate Howard. She's the managing deputy director.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, well, if there are no other comments, let's move to public comment.
No public comment.
Not even Mr. Turner? Okay. That will close out agenda item number 6. Thank you, Vice President Jordanic / BOPEC Chair Jordanic, for all of your work and drafting all of that. That closes the agenda item. Let's move to agenda item number 7, the annual report, discussion and possible action on the 2022 Elections Commission annual report as drafted by the Vice President Christopher Jordanic. So we will again pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you, President Stone. So I'd just like to start out by thanking everyone for, your patience. I should probably have finished this, several months ago, but it's ready now. And I think one piece of advice for future presidents is maybe just to work on the annual report during the year while things are actually happening. It might be easier to get done.
But it's December already.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you have told me that a
I
year
know. I
ago?
realize that. Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
kidding. Just
yeah.
kidding.
So yeah, the annual report, basically it kind of serves two purposes. One is to provide a record of what happened during the year. And then the second part of it is any kind of information that the president thought would be useful to future commissions. And for that second part, I focused a little bit more on, subjects that have more expertise in. And part of it is not just because I have more expertise in it, but also because I'm not going to be around next year to answer questions about stuff. So I tried to be as thorough as I could on those topics. And I will mention that Commissioner Dye sent me some suggestions in writing by email yesterday, and I'm sure she'll say something about those. But there were about maybe a dozen suggestions. Some of them were, typo type things, and others were just restructuring some sentences to be clearer. And I did like the suggestions that she made. So those suggestions are included in the packet. I did include the email as a PDF in the packet. So those are in writing. But otherwise, I'll just, I'm interested to hear people's feedback if people have any suggestions or if people are okay with the content.
Thank you, Vice President Jordanic. I will open the floor. Commissioner Dye.
Yeah, since Vice President Jordanic was so kind to provide Commissioners Parker and I with written feedback, I went ahead and put everything in writing because it is easier to follow up and feedback that way. As Vice President Jordanic pointed out, a lot of these are just clarifications or some typos, but I did want to highlight a few things that for the rest of the commission to consider. One was on page 12. It mentions that there were 4 elections, and I just wanted to add the word general before elections because the Department of Elections also conducts special district elections and elections for the school district. And I thought that would be useful to add that and how many additional elections were done in addition to the general elections that most people are familiar with. And then several comments regarding the, starting on page 25, around the history of the director's appointment. I thought it might be good to either move up the sentence that noted that the previous terms he was reappointed without a search process. It seemed to make more sense to put that under history, or just add a sentence there. And on page 28, the last paragraph had a lot of negatives, which I found very confusing to parse. So I suggested some language to clarify what we affirmatively did as opposed to what we didn't do. So that we voted only to open a competitive search process, given that it had until April, et cetera, to do reappointment. So that the details are in the packet there. A suggestion, replacing the second instance of sensationalized, just being clear that when the story spread nationally, it was repeating the misinformation that had started. And then the only other item that is something for consideration is just clarifying, there's a statement there on page 31 that the position is not a lifetime position, just adding the additional clarification, but a 5-year one. It's a 5-year term. So
Point of clarification, can you direct us to exactly what you're referring to on page 31?
page 31, fourth paragraph, last line. There's a comment that the position is not a lifetime position, and I was just suggesting adding, but a 5-year one. Just
Thank
for
you.
further clarification. And most of the other ones are simply either grammatical errors or changing some words to clarify it.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye.
And I just wanted to add in person, thanks for all the time that you clearly spent putting this incredibly comprehensive history together for all of us, especially as you pointed out on the 20th anniversary of the Elections Commission. So I think it's appropriate that it's a weighty document.
Other commissioners have feedback? I don't know who came first, so I'm going with the screen, and then I'll go Commissioner Parker and then Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Thank you. I don't have specific comments on word things. I just, given that I wasn't on the commission during the period that this report covers, that's the primary reason why I don't have any comments. But I just wanted to say thank you. Like, I found it as a new commissioner really helpful to have all of this synthesized and in one place. And, you know, like, I have referred back to many sets of minutes and I've watched a couple of meetings when I have specific questions, but it was very helpful to see this. Additionally, because of the context that you provided with other historical pieces. So I think that it'll be a really useful historical document, both for the commission, but also for the public who's trying to follow our work. And it was, you know, even though it was very long, it was easy to follow and get through. So thank you for the way you organized it and for all of the work it took. I'm sure it was a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayden Crowley?
Thank you, President Stone, and thank you, Vice President Jordanic. I'm just looking over the summary of what went down with the Director Arnson. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the detail that you provide on the only reference to the objection to the point, it's page 28, is just that the commission voted 4-2 to open up a competitive selection process and to invite Director Arntz to participate. And then the next 2 paragraphs are about how 4 people felt about the process. 2 people voted against it, and I do think that it merits a sentence or 2 about our objections. Because otherwise it's page, 28 up here.
Okay, 28, sorry.
Otherwise it comes across as that we all were in agreement, and that wasn't the case. So that's it. But I'm really not gonna go to the mat on this, quite frankly. I'm just not. I just say.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden Crowley. I can share my my comments. I appreciated how thorough this was. So thank you. It kind of read like a magnum opus. So kind of for the commission's 20-year mark and for your 10-year mark. So well done. I also think the history in the commission is valuable. I actually really value Commissioner Hayden Crowley's feedback about the dissenting opinion and would agree we should incorporate that into the rationale. And perhaps Commissioner Hayden Crowley, you could also share what you'd like that statement to be to ensure that, sorry?
I have to remember it.
Yeah, well, just maybe a sentence that reflects, that adequately reflects your opinion, and therefore it's not, yeah, I think that would ensure that it is in your voice. And of course, Commissioner Bernholz is welcome to participate in that. I would like to ask for a point of clarification again from Commissioner Dye about page 28, because I absolutely agree that the double negative can be messy, but I also think there's value to clarifying that it wasn't in fact how it was being represented, and what we did and didn't vote on. And so I'd love to hear that point of clarification. And I also thought that the piece, I just wanted to add one other piece of affirmation around the redistricting part. And I thought that it was pretty non-objective, pretty objective rather. And I think that was really valuable as well, Vice President Jordanek, so thank you. The only other piece I'll add before handing it back is I did ask Vice President Jordanek about adding the website transition in here, and we talked about when it made the best sense. So just so folks know, we ultimately decided to have that be included in the 2023 report because our website didn't actually fully transition until this year, even though Vice President Jordanek was actually working on it in 2022. So I just wanted to call that out. I did mention it a little bit in the rationale for how difficult it is to transition between presidents. When I went through the Rules of Order strategic project, that it was like a perfect storm in January of this year of all the things that we were trying to accomplish. But I think I just wanted to resurface that here because the website transition was an enormous amount of labor, and the Vice President Jordanek did do quite a bit on that that is not necessarily reflected in this annual report. So I wanted to make sure I called that out. Commissioner Dye, do you want to clarify? Yeah.
Sure. So if you look at the last full paragraph on page 28, it says that the media reported incorrectly that the commission had decided to not reappoint the director. So there's already a bunch of negatives there. But then it further goes on to say these stories weren't correct because the commission didn't decide not to reappoint the director. So I was suggesting changing the second sentence and combining it with the third sentence. So let me see if I can read it as it would sound. These stories weren't correct because, let me pull up my notes here. Because the commission voted only to open a competitive search, given that it had until April, blah, 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 the rest of the sentence. In other words, rather than saying what we didn't not do, just to say what we did do because we had this extra time.
Just to respond to that, I understand that you're trying to move it into the affirmative. I'm not sure I agree with the change of how you did that. That's all.
Okay.
So would you mind just rereading what you said? I was having trouble following.
Sure. These stories weren't correct because the commission voted only to open a competitive search, given that it had until April, the rest of that sentence.
I see. Okay.
In other words, because the first sentence already said it had reported incorrectly that we had decided. So it was felt a little redundant and also was confusing. So I just reworded it. And then the last part of the last sentence, instead of saying reiterating again about not reappointing, And the commission didn't vote on the director's contract at those meetings either, just to make it more clear, as opposed to specifically about not, we didn't talk about the director's contract, period. So obviously not reappointing was also not talked about. I was just trying to clarify it. I found it very confusing.
No, I get it. I just want to make sure I knew what you were changing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayden Crowley, was there something?
I agree with Commissioner Dye. I think it's a little awkwardly constructed and just needs to be cleaned up. But, that's going to happen when someone writes 46 pages. It can't be perfect. That's pretty impressive. Vice President Jordanic, I have to say this is really comprehensive, and I am really, I don't know what we're going to do without you.
Vice President Jordanic.
Yeah, I just want to, and thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the kind words. Yeah, on this particular sentence with the double negative, I can say, like, even when I was writing and I knew this was kind of confusing, but I couldn't really at the time come up with a better way. So I'm open to improvements, whatever people want to do.
ChatGPT.
No, there's no AI
Put
here,
it in there and say revise. It'll fix it for you.
right?
I'll do it right now.
Okay, so I move to adopt Vice President Jordanic's annual report for 2022 with after he's reconciled the proposed changes from Commissioner Dye and in conversation from this meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Volsi. Any other points of discussion before we move to public comment? Okay. Let's move to public comment.
No public comment.
Really? Okay.
There's one.
Alan, did you have a comment? Alan,
Yes.
did you have a
Yes.
comment?
Yes. Hello. Am I being heard now? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening. I just want to very briefly, just support Commissioner Crowley's comments a moment ago about having the voice of the dissent more clearly articulated in this. Okay, that's very important. But I sympathize with the dissenting voices around that decision, and so I clearly want to see those included more fully in this. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
No other commenters.
Secretary Davis. Let's move to a vote on adopting Vice President Jordanic's 2022 annual report. I think we should start from the top.
Can you restate the motion?
Yes, the full motion is to adopt Vice President Jordanic's draft annual report after he's reconciled the proposed changes from Commissioner Dye and the full body's discussion.
Commissioner Stone,
Yes.
Vice President Jordanic,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernholz,
Yes.
Commissioner Dye,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley,
Yes.
Commissioner Levolsi,
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
Everyone is affirmed, so
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, thank you again, Vice President Jordanic. think we've said that a lot tonight. That closes agenda item number 7. Can't believe we're moving this quickly. I'm proud of us. Agenda item number 8, Redistricting Initiative, discussion and possible action on the Commission's Redistricting Initiative, including but not limited to review of contents in the written report, analysis of findings, presentation and positioning of materials, supplemental documents and resources, related plans for future Commission engagement, and others. So before I hand it over to Commissioners Dye and Parker, I just wanted to resurface the way that we ran this last time, because from the feedback that or how I picked up I perceived people's sentiment surrounding how we did this last time. I thought it was very helpful. So I'll remind everyone how we did it last time and hope that it continues to be a good way of doing this. So my proposal is that we have Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Dye give a brief intro, and then we allow commissioners who did not compile the report or complete the report to have the opportunity to share feedback. And then rather than going like point of feedback by point of feedback, each commissioner all the 5 others, including Commissioner Volsi, because the Fierce Committee has since dissolved. So the 5 other commissioners have the opportunity to run through their feedback before then passing it back to the Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Dye. I do think that the way we did it last time was by section, and so perhaps we could go one commissioner and then respond. I'm kind of open to that, depending on how much feedback we get. But are folks comfortable with that strategy? So each commissioner has the opportunity to run through all of their feedback before we then give it back to the folks who developed the report. Is that fair? Are you comfortable with that? Okay. Great. So I will hand it back to Commissioners Dye and Parker.
Well, we didn't really coordinate how we would introduce it, so sure, what I'll just say is that we tried really hard to incorporate the feedback you all provided last time, which we generally heard to provide much more detail, much more narrative and to follow. We also put a lot of time into finding citations to academic reports, to meetings, and just providing the original sources, and tried to stay away from commentary and really just presenting information. And then, and just, a few examples of the feedback we tried to incorporate, for instance, from Commissioner Bernholz, in framing how things are done now is the way it is now, is done in ballot simplification, for instance, as a way to frame that. And then, of course, you've seen the format of the entire report, but starting with an executive summary and a summary chart, and then getting more into details later. You'll note in the attachments, there are not attachments. We just said what the attachments will be. At that point, we spent a lot of time over the last few weeks putting this together, and so we just sort of ran out of time to provide those, and those were not new documents to any of you. So we did not add those, but those would be in a final report, whatever this body decides to do with any of this information. Just a couple of other notes I will add and then see if Commissioner Dye has anything to add. I did notice in reviewing, there were formatting, when you're passing documents between 2 people, formatting situations happen between different devices, which is what happened. But I noticed that through that process, the page numbers are off. So you'll see, in parentheses throughout the report, like, look at this section on page whatever, and those, at least all the ones that I noticed, are wrong. And so we'll have to update those later. So just wanted to acknowledge I saw that. That will be not helpful for anybody if we don't fix those. And then also wanted to note that, another suggestion that I had brought up in the last meeting was, let's make sure we include public comment. So you'll see the representation there. And also noting, since we published this report, there have been more form letter campaigns coming in just in the last few days. One just over the last 2 or 3 days, that is, the title of it was I oppose politically motivated fierce recommendations on redistricting, which as of about noon today, we had received about 130 of those emails. And there was another form letter that we noted in the report that was in process as of publishing that we've received about 48 so far about supporting redistricting at this meeting today. So I just wanted to, for full transparency, let you know the kind of the latest numbers on those. And I don't know what else you want to add, Commissioner Dye.
Sure. So hopefully you all enjoyed your weekend reading. Commissioner Bernholtz, last year after our educational session had thanked me for a graduate level education in redistricting. So this is now a graduate level thesis. So I just wanted to add that in addition to drafting a lot of the narrative, that everything that makes this report beautiful and stylish is due to Commissioner Parker. She did all the call out boxes and she chose the fonts. There was an issue in the translation to PDF that the title fonts got kind of smushed. We think we have a solution for that. So we promise it will be beautiful the way that she intended by the time we're done. The other thing that I will commit to do is putting in internal hyperlinks so that if there are page number changes, they will automatically be updated. So that's something we can add in the final formatting. As Commissioner Parker mentioned, we've had these additional letter campaigns, and our intention is just to include the copy of the main letter in the appendices. So again, people can look at them themselves, and we will augment the feedback from the public section to add these additional letters. And then I did want to mention there was one additional citation that I just got today that was on an evaluation that was done by the USC Schwarzenegger Institute on the 2020 California Citizens Redistricting Commission, which had some of the outcomes from citizen redistricting. It actually compares what the diversity of our legislature looked like after the legislature redistricted us back 20 years ago, and then after the 2010 California Citizens Redistricting Commission, and then after this last cycle, when we first voted in these new maps in 2022. And basically the number of female elected state legislatures has doubled. The number of Asian legislatures has tripled. Almost doubled for African American legislatures, and the Latinx legislators have gone from 20% to 28%. So pretty dramatic change in representation. So that was something that we were going to add. And then we'll probably add a couple of sentences just to make sure that the final report is consistent with DCA Flores's memo that's included in this packet on the Fair Maps Act of 2023. We received that memo late on Friday and did not have time to incorporate it all. So we're just going to do a check and make sure that is incorporated in addition to any feedback she might have on the report. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Okay, so I will open it to the 5 folks who were not Commissioner Dye and Commissioner Parker to share feedback. And then, depending on the feedback, I think we can just go back and forth. Vice President Jordanek.
Yeah, I just want to start out by thanking both of you for the huge amount of work you did on this document. It's a huge change from what we had at the last meeting, and I'm really appreciative of all the work you did to kind of take into account all the feedback we gave you at the last meeting. So yeah, thank you. And I also, I provided feedback in writing to you, and I attached that for transparency reasons as part of the packet, and I want to thank you for incorporating that feedback as well. So I'm not going to have a whole lot of feedback to provide today just because I've already provided a lot of feedback in writing. But I mean, I'll just say at the outset that I'm very supportive of all the recommendations. And I think these are straightforward recommendations, especially with all the examples out in the world today and given how long it's been since San Francisco first developed its process. And really the suggestions I have are more around, different wordsmithing and things. I'm not sure how much time today we'll have for that, but I can provide some. But generally, I'm very supportive of the document. But when we get to individual sections, I may have different wording suggestions.
I think you can do your individual, if you'd like folks to make their general comments first, that's fine too. But I was thinking, rather than going section by section, just share your comments as they go.
Okay, well, I guess wanted to give a more general comment first, and then we can go.
Okay,
down.
that sounds good. Commissioner LaVolsi.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this was an excellent job. I really appreciated the citations. That was extremely helpful, and it's very thorough. And I think it's something that we as a commission should be proud of. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner LaVolsi. Okay, I have general comments, but then I was going to also go into my feedback. So would you like to just go straight into your feedback, or do you want me to? I'm happy to go. If you don't want to be the first to give inline feedback.
You can go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I will take the reins. Okay, this is President Stone. I want to echo the thanks that were already shared. I especially want to make a call out for the layout, the format, and even more so the items on, I know you said the pages were messed up, but from where I'm looking, page 15 through 18, the meeting topics and the table. I know that I have been very annoying about this. I don't want to call myself annoying, but I've been a little bit, I've been repeating myself quite a bit, and I was really, really happy to see I've been consistent. I'm really, really appreciative. I think this is really important. I'm hopeful that we can maybe pull it out, that table out as well, to just like put it into a separate one-sheeter as well, if it isn't too much trouble. And we can add that to the website separately as well. I think it's really great, and that therefore people can have access to, both it being in the report and that one-sheeter in general, I think is just good for folks to have access to. I didn't notice some of the text things that you mentioned, but I noticed the header, like the executive summary, like the languages, like the letters were really condensed. And so that was I actually didn't notice the other items that you mentioned. So I just wanted to call that out. I also was glad to see feedback from the public that was incorporated into there, in both directions. It's really good that was mentioned, in addition to calling out areas where we recognized we didn't have the support or resources to get as much public input as we would want. I think both of those things are important. I also wanted to say thank you to the DCA, to DCA Flores, for putting the memo together on 760. I think it's really important that we have that come from their office rather than the interpretation of the commission. So I did want to ask if the DCA had the time to review the report, but we can come back to that. So I just wanted to say all of that up front as my general comments about all of it. I imagine this took an enormous amount of work, so thank you, really. I also wanted to share that I support the recommendations that are included in this report. I like the structure of it being a report with then recommendations embedded inside of it, and I really hope that members of the public as well have the opportunity to look at these recommendations very clearly, because what I find to be most powerful about them is how harmless they are and how really reasonable they actually are, and that there are things that I think will make the process more fair. And so I do support those. In terms of feedback I have for the report in general, I do have some specific suggestions, mostly things that I would want to change how they're worded or just remove sentences altogether. And so I hope you don't mind me just running through that now. So the executive summary. So the line, everything around San Francisco has leveled up. I would like to remove that. I think the tone of some of that paragraph in general is a little clunky. And I was thinking perhaps a way to approach that would be to remove the sentences that come before the California Citizens Redistricting sentence. And then, hang on, in the, hold on, how we arrived at these recommendations. I want to give people page numbers so that they can follow along as well. Draft 2, page, yeah. So let me just go back. So page 1, executive summary, my suggestion is to remove the sentences that come before the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. I think the sentences before that are a little clunky and maybe not as objective. I think actually Commissioner Bernholz at one point even suggested not using the language everything, and I agree with that. Everything or everyone. I just wanted to resurface that now. And then where it says how we arrived at these recommendations, there on the next page, there's a line that says, and referral to the Board of Supervisors for a possible charter amendment. I actually would like to remove that line because the commission did not decide this up front. What we decided was to investigate and research the question and then ultimately decided, make decisions along the way. But I think we were very explicit on the front end that we didn't have a preconceived notion that we were going to search for a charter amendment. And I want to make sure that's clear to the public. Then where it says the final set of recommendations was presented to the full commission on November 2023 as a group versus as individual components because of the interdependencies. The commission provided its initial feedback and asked for a detailed report, which is what you're reading now. I don't know that we necessarily need that full explanation. I think the report actually speaks for itself. I would add one line though at the end, and apologies, this is moving backward to page 1, at the end of the executive summary that just says what the outcome of the initiative was, which was that the outcome of the initiative was that the committee provided a slate of recommendations that the commission aims to provide to the Board of Supervisors. Not that language, but just literally one sentence. Okay, and then moving forward on the why us, let me find the exact page number, draft page 9. It says relatively low voter registration rates. I want to be careful with how we're talking about that. I think that, so it's what you cite as the Bay Area Equity Atlas, which is one of the sources that I used when first developing the voter registration policy priority, but it's only one data point and their data hasn't been updated since 2020. So what I would recommend we do, and it's also mentioned again on page 30, I think that this could be easily solved by just saying compared with other Bay Area counties, because actually San Francisco has very high voter registration rates in the context of the country, but as it compares to others. And then I also would recommend that we cite our policy priority. It doesn't have to be in lieu of the Bay Area Equity Atlas, but I do think our policy priority is something the whole commission also voted and agreed on and demonstrates that it's something we're actively working on. The next area that I really want to go into is where I had actually significantly more feedback, and it's maybe a bit more sensitive. So I just wanted to kind of share that. So on page 12, going into the commission's involvement with the 2021-2022 redistricting process, I actually was confused about the line, besides oversight of the Director of Elections' responsibility to support the RDTF as an ex officio member and with contracting consultants. I actually didn't know what that meant, so would love to get that clarified. And then there's a sentence, commissioners, and again, sorry, just to make sure.
What page was that on?
Page 12, sorry if I'm
Page
talking
13.
too quickly.
Page 13. First line,
Top of page 13.
top of the page.
Apologies, I was walking very quickly.
Just to clarify,
Yes.
would you like us to make a more declarative statement about what the department, the Director of Elections responsibilities are?
I don't think that the commission was really involved in that. And I don't really, I think it's confusing. I think it's also potentially misleading, because we oversee the director, but we don't have responsibilities. I also think saying that we're as an ex officio member and with contracting, I think that that's misleading. I don't think the commission was really doing that level of oversight.
Okay, yeah, I think we can separate that. So the Director of Elections does have these responsibilities, and
Right.
we are responsible for oversight. So maybe separating them?
I just don't think that I think that it is misleading to suggest that the commission had that level of authority. Yes, we do oversee the director, but there is, I mean, I was on the commission and we had never were involved in that level of the director's work. But this can be a point of discussion. Let's come back to it. It's definitely not something I feel like it's not the hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah, I actually think neither of us were on the commission when this would have been done. The contracting was done in 2021, I think, right?
Well, you said to support them. You said to support the task force, and then you also said with contracting consultants. So there are two separate pieces there. It's sure, Vice President Giordani.
Yeah, so I think, well, there's sort of like a tension here because on a technical level, the commission oversees the director who has this formal role. But I think the point President Stone is making is that during the director's reports, we weren't really focusing in on the director's involvement in the director's responsibilities. So
I think we should just clarify that the Director of Elections has specific responsibilities and the commission has oversight, but did not, because we don't actually know, because I think you and Commissioner Bernholtz were the only ones on the commission at the time this might have happened.
yeah, I mean, we might have asked a question about something like, was there enough staff support or something, but it wasn't really a big topic.
Let's come back to this. Let's come back to this. Yeah, I think this is something we can solve.
Yeah, I think it just is too much in one sense.
The pieces that I have stronger feelings about are I want to make sure I get the right page number. Page 13. Commissioners noticed a protest on the steps of City Hall directed at the RDTF, which was holding a simultaneous meeting, but were surprised by a full hearing room. So I'll just tell you, I'd like that to be removed. This does not reflect the experience of the full commission, and it comes off that way. It may have been one commissioner's experience or maybe a couple of commissioners' experience, but I want to be very clear that I think that is not. I think adding the emotion of surprise about a full hearing room is, I'll speak for myself, that was not my experience. And then the next piece is many commenters cited transparency issues, especially noting a 3 a.m. decision the night before to reverse a vote on a map widely supported by Black, LGBTQ+ and Asian communities. I'd like to remove the word widely and change the word communities to community groups. I don't think that we are at liberty to speak about what the wide support of all members of the Black, LGBTQ+ and Asian communities felt. I think we can only speak to the community groups who were present at that meeting, of which I think there were only about 40 people, and therefore 40 people is not necessarily reflective of the wide majority of those communities. In the 2-day span before the meeting, a number of articles appeared speculating the political forces behind the redistricting drama. I'd like to reevaluate the use of the word drama. That feels, I actually didn't know which part that was referring to, but it also didn't feel objective. So I'd like to change that word. I don't have strong feelings about what the word would be changed to, but I think we can come back to this.
Lots of lessons.
That is the last sentence of page 13. And then the statement and let me just make sure this was on page 14. I think it's on page 14.
Or process.
Yeah, I think process.
Yeah, they're all fixable. We're happy to change them.
Process is good. Oh, here we go. Yeah, page 14, my next comment. Especially in a situation where replacing our appointees was impractical given the short time frame. I would also like to remove this line. I think it oversimplifies and also doesn't reflect each commissioner's input in that meeting. I think that was not.
Which paragraph was this?
Yes, that is page 14. It's in. As an independent body,
the first
we
paragraph.
would not take lightly the prospect of potentially interfering with another independent body. And then it says, especially in a situation where replacing our appointees was impractical given the short time frame. I actually don't think that fully reflects what was said. And so I have a proposal for in lieu of that, because I actually would like to remove that. But there's one other point before I will explain my alternative. But it says, after asking our appointees and Chair Townsend to do more to address concerns raised by the public, I also don't think that this was decided on by the full commission, maybe a commissioner or another commissioner, but not everyone. So my proposal is that only the language that was voted on by the full commission should be included in the report about what the outcome was. So basically in lieu of that statement of especially in a situation, and then the piece about Chair Townsend, I think remove those and just keep what you have as it pertains to what the commission voted on.
So start on we resolved.
Yes, I think that's right. I think that's appropriate. The other thing I will mention, it goes back to actually something Commissioner Hayden Crowley brought up in the annual report that I think is important to mention here, is the resignation of a commissioner from the body. Commissioner Jung basically had very strong negative feelings against some of what the commission had chosen. And I think it would do a disservice to the body to not call out that he disagreed with the many components of this. And so I will leave it to the commission for us to discuss how that is incorporated. But I do think that there was a dissent. As it reads currently, it doesn't reflect that there was some dissenting sentiment on the body about how to proceed. And I think we need to make sure we include that. That's it. I know it brings up a lot of difficult memories. So I do apologize for that, but I hope that feedback is helpful. So we can go through those now or go then to Vice President Jurnanik. I will leave it to Commissioners Dye and Parker if you'd like to go through some of those specifically or go to the next commissioner.
I mean, we could go through these. I almost feel funny, like responding to the things that you just said related to the ending part, because I wasn't there. And so I really appreciate those of you who were there to be able to provide context. So it seems to me that all these suggestions are very easy to integrate and sound great. You know, I think the intention, at least from my perspective, but I think from both of us, was let's remove subjectivity as much as possible. And so anything that you're suggesting to do that, I'm like 100% in support of. And it's, you know, like I wish we could catch them better, but it was a lot of content. So thank you for catching them now. And I would really like to remove anything that feels that way. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have any issue. I think these are good catches. We did our best to catch it as we went through, but, you know, especially the executive summary was the last thing we did, and we were both pretty exhausted at that point. So I did have a question on the executive summary.
Yeah.
You didn't like the first sentence either? That is it's similar to the first sentence in the intro, so I was just curious.
Yeah, sorry. Bear with me for a moment to catch up.
That's the one that just said San Francisco was a pioneer. I understand why you don't like the second sentence, but wasn't sure about the first.
I'll just respond in line. I think if we're going to say something such as we're a pioneer in citizen redistricting, I think there needs to be more context provided.
So wait till the intro?
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, because we do say it again in the intro, so,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, just clarity on.
Can I just add to that? It sounds to me that, and I think this is in the intro, is just that instead of saying a pioneer in citizen redistricting, San Francisco was the second city in the state of California, you know, something like that is just factual as opposed to, we were a pioneer, you know, shouting up, you know,
Yes.
hand raising, that it's just factual. We were the second, you know, to do that.
I think that would be
might be more
great.
effective.
Yes, I concur.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Let's see if I had any other questions. Yeah, I liked your catch on the comparative with the other Bay Area counties because, yes, we actually do have very high voter registration rates, so that's good. Yeah, if you're okay with replacing drama with process, I think that's straightforward. On Commissioner Chung, you know, he's the one who drafted the final resolution. He did announce he was resigning at the end of the meeting. He didn't actually explain why he was resigning, so I didn't know if it was appropriate. He had announced that he was planning to resign in February, so I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to put that in there and tie it to this because I have not seen anything official. It was not in his letter of resignation. It was not in any media reports. I don't know what the citation would be.
I can respond directly to that. I mean, I think it is no secret that Commissioner Jung was very unhappy with that special hearing. And in fact, he explicitly said that we should all be ashamed of ourselves. So I think that's pretty direct. And, you know, whether we agreed or disagreed, I just think we owe it to the body to be honest that there was not full consensus. I do recall Commissioner Jung participating in drafting the motion, though I also believe that was pretty contentious as well. And so I think just doing it a service and mentioning that there was a dissenting voice, that it wasn't just, you don't need to explicitly say that he told the commission that they should be ashamed of themselves, but I do think, and I would have to go back and rewatch some of that, but just a mention of that expressed dissent would, I think, be important to mention.
Okay, no problem with that. I was just wondering if you wanted us to tie it directly as to the reason of his resignation, because that was not something he said in his letter or anything like that.
No, I think it was just something that we all inferred.
Okay, so we'll just indicate dissent. That's fine. Great. Keep it coming.
Oh, great. Okay, we can come back to that comment about besides the oversight of the director of elections as well. Let's go, because I saw Vice President Jadonic, you had your hand up. I think we've gone through a lot of my edits, so let's hand it to the next commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, President Stone. So I was going to suggest some edits on the executive summary as well, and I think of all sections,
It was the last section, so.
yeah, well, yeah, but and I that's understandable, but also, you know, from the perspective of the public, this may be the only thing they see. So I think it is worth us spending more time on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also this could just be me, but I think it might be worth maybe striking a little bit more of an academic tone, and then maybe simplifying some of the sentences. And I just had a few suggestions on this page. So this is just the first page. So on the second sentence, I was actually I had suggested a possible rephrasing of that just to be a little bit more, you know, formal or something. Yeah, less jargony. We could say over the past 27 years, many jurisdictions in California have adopted reforms that surpass San Francisco's. So, and then,
Are you talking to the microphone?
That it's not surpassed because but had they've set new
A new bar?
standards,
Yeah.
new standards, yeah.
set new standards, because surpass would suggest that there was, well, I'm not thinking clearly, but
We get your
Yeah,
idea. Good.
some phrase like that, right?
set new standards.
Good.
And then when you say, but San Francisco as a charter city was exempt, you could just simplify that and say, as a charter city, San Francisco was exempt from compliance. And then when you say all around the state, other cities and counties have caught up with effective practices, I was thinking that could read, throughout the state, other cities and counties have adopted newer practices that prioritize independent redistricting commissions. And then my last suggestion on this page was where you say keeping these citizen bodies as far from political influence as possible while working transparently and with their communities. Yeah, so I was suggesting end of the sentence at that prioritize independent redistricting commissions, new sentence, and then you can say in these jurisdictions, the commissions are citizen bodies that are protected from political influence as much as possible. End sentence. And then they work transparently with their communities to draw maps that represent all communities as fairly and effectively as possible.
Could you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so in these jurisdictions, the commissions are citizen bodies that are protected from political influence as much as possible, period. They work transparently with their communities to draw maps that represent all communities as fairly and effectively as possible. It's kind of taking the one sentence and breaking it up.
Breaking into three.
So that's all, yeah.
Thank you, Vice President Jordanek. Commissioners Levolsi, Hayden Crowley, and Bernholz wanted to give you opportunity to give feedback on the report. Yes, Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Thank you, President Stone. I also want to recognize Commissioner Dye, Commissioner Parker, and Commissioner Levolsi for this PhD type report. I don't know where you find the time. I have not examined this as closely as my fellow commissioners who were present, who lived this history. And I also would like to thank them for doing so, for living the history, but also for remembering it. I think that the way that you have approached this latest draft is more in line with the way it should be presented. It's, it strikes a more neutral tone. It also recognizes the feedback that we've gotten from many of the folks here who are not crazy about, well, that's, I'm putting it diplomatically, about changing the process. But as they like to say, the only people that like change are babies. So that's why this, it can be very arduous and uncomfortable, and nobody wants to disagree and so forth. But I actually am a proponent of making things more fair. I did notice that you had dropped, it would appear, and I need confirmation that you would drop the requirement, or it would be the disqualification of people who, am I correct, of disqualification of people who contribute $500? You talk about it, but it didn't look like you were, did I miss that?
You probably missed that. That's still in line with protecting the commission from
Right.
political influence, so it's still in there.
I saw it as a discussion point, but I didn't see it as a criterion.
What, it's still a criterion.
Where am I?
What we, and if we missed it, let's double check. This should be under qualifications and restrictions.
What page?
Yeah, page, let's go to page
30.
30. What we added for context was what some other, we added a table there to show what some, yeah, it's called major donors. It's the category. Yeah, so what we did,
Closures, yeah, I kept looking at this. Where am I, what am I missing?
it may be,
If you, I'll show you.
Applicant's spouse or immediate family members cannot have been candidates, elected officials, staffers, major donors, or, but you don't define what major donors means.
Right.
Okay, I would say that if you're going to disqualify people who are major donors, I think you need to disqualify anybody that contributes $100 or more, in all fairness. Under 100 in San Francisco, you don't have to claim that on your forms when you're running for office. So if you want to give $99.50, it's not a public record. But I do think that if you're going to disqualify folks based on donations, I think it should be across the board. That would be my compromise for this particular criteria.
yeah, so it's just for information, the, if you look at the table that's on page 31, I did do a comparison of this and each of the candidate elected, campaign or elected staff, elected staffer, lobbyist, major donor, party. These are only 5 of the categories. Some of them go into, there's a huge variation on this, by the way. There are a lot of other criteria. Sometimes it includes city employees, government contractors, if you've ever been a redistricting. And so I didn't do all of those. I did the 5 main categories just as a comparison. And
The only one is CCRC?
no, also Michigan, LA, sorry, major donor, the city of Sacramento, Long Beach, Oakland, Berkeley.
The next page.
It's on the next page. So one of the things we're going to go back and do is check to make sure that we're repeating header rows for any rows that break over a page. So there are a bunch of formatting things we need to deal with.
Okay. Well, that's my feeling. I feel strongly about it. I think that if you're going to I just think $500, we've labeled that as a major donor. I think it would, I know in your world, it's a small pool of people. I don't think that those people deserve to be disqualified and not serve on. And I think if you're going to do it for one, you do it for all the donors.
So anyone over 100.
Right.
Okay.
That would be it. But I will tell you that I appreciate all the work that you've done. And I really want to acknowledge that a lot of people showed up because they care about this. This has my support. I believe in fair representation and fair government and promoting more diversity and equity. And that's why actually I'm making the suggestion that I am. So much is driven by fear because, oh, we're going to change something and we're not going to get the same results. Well, the results before we used the same process and other people weren't happy with it. Inevitably, people aren't happy because somebody invariably doesn't get what they want. I mean, that's the nature of compromise and working in government. And it's disappointing, but hopefully we all can work together and get the results that we want. No situation is perfect, but that's what democracy is about. And it's messy, but I personally, it's my preferred system of government, and I will work to protect it. But I really want to thank all of you for all of your hard work on this. I don't know how you did it, but
Hours every night.
Not washing dishes, not sleeping.
Commissioner Parker, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question, Commissioner Hayden Crowley. I'm wondering with that suggestion, I mean, it's an interesting suggestion, right? Because you're totally right. As far as disclosing donations goes, if we were to keep the header recommendation on just the major donors and then add some language in the paragraph where we talk about, I just scrolled too far.
I would add it to the first paragraph after the chart.
Right.
Because it actually.
Right. So if they're, so we said like, for example, $500, blah, 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 but we could say, and there was some discussion on the commission of going, $100 and above because these are the disclosure requirements. And so just add it as some additional consideration because we're not prescribing what something should be. We're just saying, consider major donors as influence. And here are this is the range of discussion.
Suggests
Yeah.
I think it needs to be public donors or something like that.
Oh, giving some
Reportable?
kind of maybe reportable, because I was going to say,
Yeah,
'cause you could be a
reportable,
donor
reportable.
under 100 still. So
Yeah.
some kind of a qualifier that shows 100 or
Right.
above.
Right.
And
So-
changing the language.
Do you know where that because we're going to need a citation, where that stipulation is that it's over? Is that on the form 700?
No, it's probably on ethics. It's probably on the Ethics Commission site.
What
The 100 and above and.
yeah, it probably is, but I do know that from filing those reports.
I think it's form
in previous
700, so
campaigns.
we can.
Anything under 100, you don't have to report.
Reportable. I like that. Yeah, so it actually makes complete sense to add it as a sentence because one of the things that was very interesting as I was researching the chart here is that Sacramento and Oakland classify major donors as 50% of the max. And what I found is that, remember you were complaining about how San Francisco hasn't changed the maximum in forever? Oakland has to change it every 2 years. And so their max is 2,000, it's over 2,000 now. So that's why they set it at a lower bar.
Let me be clear. I'm not complaining that we haven't raised that because then we'd have to give more.
Right. Right.
Works for me. But I would just say that I know that $500 is a large amount of money, but in the context of elections across the nation, $500 is not.
For some people.
I get that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about, when you look at it, the context.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden Crowley. I'm going to hand it to Commissioner Byrne-Hulse, who has had her hand raised.
Commissioner Bernholtz, you're muted, I think, still.
Thank you. Thank you. Vice President Jordanek for teaching me how to use Zoom. Thank you for all your work on this. I'm very grateful to see that the changes in sort of tone and the cited text here. I agree with all almost all of the suggestions that have been made so far. As far as actual text recommendations, in addition to the ones that President Stone mentioned on page 2, I think given the effort to frame this as the output of a learning endeavor, that the last sentence on page 2 stop at Board of Supervisors, but include for consideration by the public and the Board of Supervisors. I believe we're hoping that the public will read this report as well. The only other comment I have of substance, building off of the last discussion, is I do think it's important that there be a statement somewhere early that these recommendations from the commission are not necessarily all they're not unanimous recommendations. They're consensus recommendations or something like that. Because otherwise, if we have to add sentences for every small change or significant change that one of us feels about, you'll never get this thing done. And that's all I have to say of that's meaningful. Thank you again for extraordinary work. Oops.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernholz. Commissioner LaVolsi.
Yes, my comments are, I think, similar in vein to Commissioner Bernholz, based on the discussion that Commissioner Hayden Carley had. I think we have to remember that this is recommendations, and ultimately the Board of Supervisors is going to do as they choose. But to Commissioner Hayden Crowley's point, I think it would just be great to just put in the different things that other jurisdictions have done and talk about the fact that there are some, not necessarily disagreement in major donor versus, let them know that we aren't all in agreement, but put in the suggestion that it not be, I'm sorry, I'm tired.
Take your time.
Let me re-articulate what I'm trying to say. So I think it would be advantageous for the Board of Supervisors to know that the committee had certain recommendations and that the larger body, when it comes to major donors, had different feelings about that. If there's a way to put that in so that they understand that we were not all in agreement. Does that make sense? I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Yeah, and actually, I think Commissioner Hayden Crowley's suggestion is perfectly fine. All the recommendation says is major donors. I think it's up to the Board of Supervisors to define what that means, and we're letting them see in this chart that different jurisdictions have defined it differently. Some has defined it at the max, some have defined an absolute number, some have defined it at 50%. Commissioner Hayden Crowley is suggesting we make it reportable. So I think we can show the.
Okay, so we can show all those different.
Yeah, what we're saying
levels.
though is that major donors is something that should be considered, and then that can be defined, and I'm sure will be defined by the Board of Supervisors should they take this up.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Parker.
Just to expand on that a little bit, we have a sentence in the middle of that paragraph, that says there was some debate on the commission on whether there should be pre-service criteria banning maximum donations, and a question whether that unnecessarily excludes. I think that's the part where we can just add a little more language that says it's not even just whether it should include, it should be banning donations, but even if there are restrictions on donations, what that size would be, just a little bit added language that can say there's a variety of opinions, which, earlier in this paragraph also, there was not consensus in the commission on the length of time appropriate for pre-service restrictions. We said, that's why we gave you a range. So this is some general recommendations. Engage the public, do your process, but there is a range of opinions on this. But it may have been not clear enough. If you're not picking up on that there's a way we could be clearer. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, sorry, Vice President Donick.
Yeah, there's one tiny little style thing too that might be worth. I noticed in some parts you use the word we. And it might be good to just do a search and replace and standardize on the commission.
Right.
If just for consistency.
I had a couple other last pieces. You had mentioned at the top that there were final attachments that didn't have time to be included. I happily noticed that the project plan wasn't included in the appendix. Are you, yeah, are you planning to leave it off?
Yep.
Thank
What's
you
there
so
is
much.
there.
I really appreciate it. We all know the work that you did. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you. One other recommendation I had was about the redistricting piece. And sorry, not the redistricting piece. This is all redistricting. As it pertains to the meetings, the special meeting and whatever, it may also be helpful to just cross-check certain things with the annual report that we just voted on. If there's anything like to make sure that they're on, they're aligned. And
I
then
was going to cite the annual report.
nice. And then I wanted to echo what Commissioner Bernhol said. I very much agree with her point. I just want to resurface what that was on page 2, where it says, the full report provides an overview, context, background, led to this report, blah, 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 set of materials, 18 months are resulting for consideration by the Board of Supervisors that we hope will be useful to city leaders. But making sure that that also includes the public. And I think weaving that into the report as well, more generally, making sure that this is something that the public should read and reference, and not just the Board of Supervisors. I think that's a really, really important point that I want to make sure we address. And I also just wanted to support the Commissioner Hayden Crowley's point around $100. And, I don't have strong feelings about major, I don't know, we could go down the rabbit hole, but I very much appreciate the compromise and also the interest to just add some more texture to to demonstrate that the commission didn't have unanimous agreement about that piece, but that there were other ideas thrown out, so that the board can solicit public input and make recommendations or make suggestions accordingly. And those are my last pieces on the content of the document. Any other last comments about the report? Okay. Do we want to iron out that last piece regarding the Director of Elections responsibility over I think if you could just clarify.
Yeah, I don't think it will be hard. We can separate, we were trying to provide probably too much information in one sentence, so I think we can separate the sentences and make clear what the role of the Director of Elections is in this process, and that, the commission has oversight responsibility for the Director and the Department of Elections, but was not actively involved until.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to separate it, because I think Vice President Jordanik's valid point was that it implies that the commission was actively managing that, which it sounds like that wasn't true. None of the rest of us, besides Commissioner Bernholtz and Vice President Jordanik, were on the commission at the time that any of that would have happened. So, if they don't remember doing anything, then we can assume nothing really happened between the actual appointing process and then.
It's not just talking about the appointing process, though. It says to support the RDTF as an ex officio member.
No, I'm sorry, that's where it's confusing, because that's actually the Director of Elections responsibility. It's not the Elections Commission's responsibility, which is why it's confusing, which is why we need to separate it.
Okay.
So one is a sentence about the Director of Elections' specific responsibilities within the redistricting process, and then separately, we're the oversight body and didn't actually actively engage in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand. The concern I have is that it feels like a stretch. Like, what I mean by that is while yes, the director of elections does have that responsibility, and yes, theoretically speaking, the commission oversees the director. Practically speaking, the commission is not,
Actively engaged in this.
practically speaking, the commission is not does not have is not taking the authority over the department elections role there. And so I think it is misleading. And
Right.
I think that actually the commission is very removed from the redistricting process. And I think it would make it seem like we're more involved in the process outside of the appointing authorities than what we actually are. But Vice President Jordan, it looks like you have a point.
Yeah, I have a possible wording suggestion for this.
Right.
And maybe we can even just take out the part about oversight because that's mentioned elsewhere and just say kind of what you were saying. Like, even though the directors has the responsibility to support the RDTF as an ex officio member, comma, the commission did not engage with the redistricting
Right.
until it's April 6th. So we like say, even though the director has
Fight
the
or
responsibility,
while, yeah.
the commission was not
Encourage.
involved until April 6th. Does that make sense?
So from my point, I mean, I think that's fine. I think that it is in the section about the 2021, 2022, but I think also just generally, having it be a general point.
We'll look at it. We
The-
understand your point.
Okay. The trouble is that well, let me just finish what I was saying. So I think it's fine if we're talking about if we're talking specifically about last year, that recommendation is fine. But I also think that we need to be careful to not suggest that the commission has more power or authority than it actually has or should have. We are very removed from redistricting beyond just having our appointees. And I think we would also need the DCA to weigh in on what would happen if the director of elections didn't fulfill his responsibility in some component of these processes, if the commission really does have that level of authority, or if that would then actually go to the Board of Supervisors. So I think we're getting into a little bit of some territory that we don't, I just want to be careful that we don't imply that the commission has a level of authority and oversight that we don't have. That's all. So if we're going to talk about it in the context of last year, it's fine. I just don't want to make it I don't want it to imply this as a general level of responsibility or oversight. That's the only piece I have strong feelings about. And I do think it matters that we iron these things out now, because I think we have to discuss as a commission what the next steps will be. Obviously, we want to, Commissioner Dye and Commissioner Parker have quite a few edits to make, and how we want to move forward, knowing those edits are going to need to be made. I have some thoughts about the best way of doing that, but we should discuss it. And then also, if we do vote to pass this report or recommendations pending the edits and commission feedback discussed today, how are we sharing this with the Board of Supervisors? Is it a formal letter? And I think we should decide all of that tonight, and what that letter would say. So it does kind of matter that we discuss these specifics. Yes, Commissioner Dye.
So my suggestion is, both of us have taken careful notes. I don't think either of us thinks that it would be that difficult to incorporate all of your feedback. We have some formatting issues to work out too. If the rest of the commission is comfortable, we can work on a final draft and run it by President Stone, just to make sure, especially since you had a lot of specific feedback. Would the rest of the commission be comfortable with approving it, assuming that President Stone is fine with the final edits? If so, my suggestion would be a formal letter from President Stone on behalf of the commission forwarding this when it's done, which hopefully will be very soon.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Commissioner Parker, did you have any differences or thoughts or additions?
I mean, I think I want to do what everybody's comfortable with, so if that's something folks are comfortable with, then great. I would imagine that we could also rework a few of those specific sections that specific commissioners, for instance, this section, sharing just a few of those paragraphs with you, President Stone, or the ones around the donor paragraph, with Commissioner Crawley, so we don't run into Brown Act situations, where we can just have a couple of, specific paragraphs. That's a way we could approach it too. I am very aware that we want to move on with this as quickly as possible. And so while still doing something that everybody is totally consenting on. So I'm feeling very aware of that we want to start January fresh, focused on elections. So, and moving away from this initiative. So I don't know if I said anything really of substance there, but there you go. Sorry.
Guys,
I've been up since 3 today.
I mean, this isn't even the latest we've gone by.
I've been up since 3 to make a flight, so it's been a long day.
I was going to say if they consider the
Hour and a half.
cumulative sleep deprivation.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Since President Stone and Vice President Jordanek had the most substantive suggestions and were present here for when, have that historical context, I would also suggest that Vice President Jordanek participate in the final review. I don't feel and I don't feel like I wasn't there for history. So your input's the most, and the other 3 commissioners. Well, actually, Commissioner Bernholtz was there too. So I guess I'm the only one that doesn't count.
That's not true.
Not true.
Commissioner Volsi and Commissioner Parker weren't there.
No, but you worked on it.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's true.
So one suggestion could be, thank you everyone for the comments and the lightheartedness. I want to just say thank you to Commissioner Parker for the shout out about end of year and starting fresh in 2024. I also think for your sake and the work that you've put together, it would be really great to be able to say we wrapped up this year and can show this amazing product. So also thinking about that from a just accomplishment perspective. One proposal, and I'm happy to talk about the paragraph edits. Like I think that's actually valuable. The only concern I have is if there's overlap and then it would get a little dicey. One thing we could do, which I liked that Vice President Jordanek did, was highlight in yellow the areas that had the specific changes. And if you want it to be me to go through and confirm that those are, aligned with the feedback that everyone gave. I mean, if it were me, I would find it much easier to be able to look yellow by yellow, like, okay, check mark, check mark, check mark. Then the question would be, if there's an area where I think I have disagreement, and I think we probably, if it goes beyond, hey, I don't think this is, I would change this or whatever, and it goes back and forth beyond one round, I think it would need to come back to the full commission, because I don't feel comfortable speaking on behalf of other people's feedback, like without us being able to vote. But if it's just making an edit, making the edits, putting them in yellow, having me like review and confirm that they are in fact what was discussed, I'm happy to do that. I also think it helps that we obviously are recording the meeting. That's why I double checked. So we can always go back and rewatch. I'm happy to do that, or hand it to Vice President Jordanek if you would like that responsibility before he departs. But otherwise, I'm happy to do it, so long as folks agree that the edits, that with what I propose, the yellow, I'll gut check if there's strong, if there's a back and forth beyond like one round, bring it back to the commission for another vote. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but are folks generally in agreement with that? Do you agree? Okay, that way it's not happening in a vacuum, and there's transparency for the public as well. Okay. So I guess another question I have is, would you want me to write that letter? I assume it could just be a few sentences, and I can draft it, but we haven't talked about it, so I can draft the letter, confirm. Once you're done with the report, I can just draft a few sentences with our masthead. And I would like everyone to agree that their names would be on it. Okay. So I'm happy to do that as well with my meeting minutes memo. Are folks in agreement with that process? So Commissioners Parker and Dye will make the edits, highlight in yellow the proposed changes. I will verify and gut check that they reflect what we've discussed today. And then I will draft a letter on our behalf and send it to, written by me, but on behalf of the commission, and send it to the Board of Supervisors. Obviously, we need to propose a vote, but I want to make sure that process is that? Yes, Vice President Giordani.
Yeah, if I like the process a lot. I think the one revision I might suggest, like if everything is like in alignment, but maybe there's like a one little thing where you did do one round of, maybe you can do like another round. you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I think we can try and find a bridge.
Yeah.
We'll try and not have it come to that. Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. The other process question, there was some mention a little earlier, I believe, that you mentioned, President Stone, about putting like the summary chart, on the website or those kinds of things. If there's some other way we want to have visibility to this, other than just embedded in the agenda and minutes. So that's my question.
I'll respond to that, President Stone. Yeah, no, I think we definitely, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to make a lot of changes to the website, slowly but surely. We have started, but for the Fierce Committee page, which is on the website, we should have the final report. We're going to have a new section on the resources page that has strategic initiatives that will have this. It's just that might be a little bit slower. I do think that the one sheeter and the final report should go on that committee, like if you go onto the website, there is a page for Fierce.
Yeah.
And so we should put the final report on there and the letter to the Board of Supervisors. But I think what we can do is try and prioritize that in the coming months, let's say closer to the January meeting. I think it's just slow. It's just slow to get stuff on the website. So, but otherwise, yes, I think it should all be readily available, no question.
Right.
Yes, Commissioner Parker.
Just again on process, just timing, given where we are in the year and things, I just want to set some reasonable expectations on when we will have this done. Some things in my personal family life are going to be very busy, pretty much this week for the next couple of weeks. And so I will have very limited time to work on this, but then I can put probably a decent amount of time on it right around the turn of the year. And so that's just realistic on my part. I might be able to put bits of time here and there to try to work on it, but that's just my reality. I'm happy to do it. That's just my timing.
Yes, Commissioner Dye.
So I'm happy to try to do a first pass and then hand it off to you because I have to grade final papers. So I have a similar thing. So I can put in a bit of time before Christmas and then hand it off to you and then have you do the final wrap on it. I was also going to say I'll see what I can do to fix all the formatting issues and putting in the internal hyperlinks because then we won't have to worry if the page numbers change.
I was going to propose that the deadline be before our next commission meeting. We have this packaged up, sent off. And that way it won't be even an agenda item on that meeting, but it gives you time to get it out the door, knowing that it will be end of year / beginning of next year. Does that sound fair? So that'll give you about a month. Vice President Giordano.
And also probably wait until after the recess before sending the email too. It's like January 5th, I think.
Any other comments? Wow. Okay, so I move that we adopt the recommendations and report pending the approval process discussed for the final redistricting initiative of the San Francisco Elections Commission.
Second.
Thank you. Let's move to public comment.
Hello, Alan Buradell here. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay, can you start my timer now? I'm going to start mine.
We have you.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Alan Buradell here. I just want to comment on a few things here, obviously. Commissioner Stone, President Stone, you mentioned a point in the report tonight about the Director of Elections responsibilities and what the oversight of the director is, and separating that in the report. I don't want to get into the content of that, but I totally understand your point here, and we all do. And you make mention that it's misleading that the commission has that level of authority. That was why you were pointing this out, okay? Misleading that the commission has this level of authority. Well, as you were talking about this with your fellow commissioners and with Commissioner Dye in particular, you were totally interrupted, okay, multiple times, mid-sentence by Commissioner Dye. You were trying to clarify the importance, right, of your points, and you were continually interrupted by Commissioner Dye. You were paraphrased improperly by her. She was recapping your points. And I urge you to listen to this again. You'll see what I'm saying. It's outrageous. And this is what's been going on with this committee. You're letting the public and this commission down. You fail to stand up, and it's an outrage. You're rolling over to these political operators, and the League of Women's Voters. Look at their Twitter page. They describe themselves as a nonpartisan yet political. Nonpartisan yet political. Wiener, Senator Wiener, you should look at his comments on April 7th. I'm not going to read it right now. I had written it out. I thought I would. The Elections Commission is under political pressure, is what he said, and how he was quoted in the papers on April 7th of 22. And who was the political pressure coming from? It was coming from the League of Women's Voters, Asian Law Caucus, and Common Cause. These are all political operators. You have totally been played by them and totally overrun on your own commission. You have let this city down. You've let this commission down. It's an embarrassment what you're doing. You should put this report out, but make no claim to having a recommendation. Put this report out word for word, but just simply take out any reference to a recommendation that this body is making. It's outrageous. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a brief reminder to public commenters, if you can direct your comments at the full commission and not individual commissioners, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hi, I can see I'm unmuted.
You've been muted. Okay, sorry.
Just one moment.
Hi again.
Yes.
Sorry, I can't hear Secretary Davis.
Can you hear her now?
No.
We have so many cooks in the kitchen. If you could just press the screen where it says, I got it.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah.
Great.
Wonderful.
Okay, just one more second. We're going to restart your timer. And
Okay.
then
Okay, you're good to go.
Well, I don't need the whole 3 minutes, thankfully. I want everyone to get some sleep, including myself, but especially you all. This is Lauren Girardin with the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. Thank you, elections commissioners, for this Herculean and important work in service to the people of San Francisco. Is this a year and a half that this has been happening? This is phenomenal. There is so much great work, so much great documentation, so much history that's been uplifted into the public eye. And so many best practices that have been documented in a way that I don't think has been documented anywhere else. So I think that this is a document that will be seen by San Franciscans, but also by people around California who are looking for resources on independent redistricting best practices and citations. League of Women Voters encourages you to vote to support this important set of redistricting recommendations and to send it along to the Board of Supervisors and to share it with the public in all the ways that you've discussed. It is deeply researched, thoughtful, and impressive. And once your work is done, there's still more work the city will need to do. And it's going to be a great 2024 if the vote passes tonight. Thank you.
thank you.
Hello?
Yes, I have you just as a phone number.
Oh, yes. Hi, my name is Sitsa Gofard. I'm with the Asian Law Caucus. And I also just want to echo the previous comment and say first a big thank you to all the commissioners for working on this for so many months and doing so much earnest and comprehensive research. Our organization also really supports all the work you've done and is really encouraged by just how comprehensive and nuanced and balanced and we think reasonable the report and its recommendations are. We really see this as an important step forward for building a stronger, more inclusive democracy in San Francisco, one that all residents can trust and have faith in. So we really urge you to pass this report and pass the recommendations tonight. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Russia.
Russia Chavez Cardenas with California Common Cause. I want to also echo our support and the time that you've taken to study how to establish a truly independent redistricting commission in the city and county of San Francisco. The amount of time and research that has gone into the thorough report that you guys all discussed is uplifting to see. And as folks who study this day in and day out, we are proud of the work that you guys have done. We think that you all should be proud of the work that you've done as well. And want to say thank you. And we look forward to continuing to engage with you in this process as it moves through its paces. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have you down as JL.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jeremy Lee, member of the 2021-22 Redistricting Task Force. I just want to say you all should be proud of the work that you've done. You all should be proud of the service you have given to our city. And just kudos to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
That appears to be the last public speaker.
Great. If anyone else raises their hand in the midst of this last discussion point, please let me know, Secretary Davis. I did want to make one quick amendment to my motion because I want to ensure the DCAs have time to review the report and get their feedback. So DCA Flores, end of the first week of January, confirming that is when you'd be able to provide feedback for the commission?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to amend my motion to adopt the recommendation and report pending the changes and DCA review. If there are substantial areas for that the DCAs have issue with, I do think we will need to rediscuss this as a body as well. So let's just keep that in mind. So perhaps when you send me the final edits, if you could just indicate the pieces that were also updated to reflect the DCA's input, that'd be great. Perhaps DCA Flores, would you mind sharing that feedback with the whole commission, the feedback that you provide on the report? Is that allowed? Is there any reason we couldn't all see if there are any concerns you have?
I would mainly be reviewing for legal errors or omissions or something related to the law. So it would probably be attorney-client privileged information that I would be sharing. I quickly reviewed it, and I'm not going to make any comments on any factual allegations or anything like that. So I didn't see a lot that needed to be changed, or if anything, from the very quick glance. So I don't think that there's going to be anything that we need to or disclose, I guess.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think that, so I amended my motion. Do I have a second on the amended motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dye. Any other public commenters have raised their hands during this period of time? Okay, then let's move to a vote. Is your mic on? Just to make sure they can hear.
President Stone.
There we go. Yes.
Vice President Jordanek.
Yes.
Commissioner Bernholz.
Commissioner Bernals had to exit the meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Dye.
Aye.
Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
Yes.
Commissioner LaVolsi.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
6 out of 7, you have your quorum.
All right, well, the motion passes. Congratulations. I look forward to reviewing the final version, and thank you to DCA Flores for taking the time to review that as well. Any other comments before we close out agenda item number 8? Okay. Agenda item number 9, agenda items for future meetings, discussion and possible action regarding items for future agendas. So we've already talked about meeting minutes in terms of like these actual meeting minutes, but then a memo on minutes themselves. And also I mentioned the need to require the budget, to review the budget in January, so I'll have to follow up with you on that. Are there any other comments? Yes, Vice President Jordanik.
Yeah, thank you, President Stone. I think it would be worth having a plan for how the policy priorities will be kept tabs on throughout the year, like whether that would be a part of the director's report, or would you have an agenda item on certain months? So just so we don't lose track of that.
Yes, thank you for raising that. That's been on my mind as well. I actually owe the director a follow-up on voter registration specifically, even though I know he's been doing a great job of incorporating that into the director's report. So I will definitely put some thought behind that ahead of the next meeting. Thank you for raising that. Yes, Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
President Stone, did you want to address your processes at a future meeting?
The rules of order. Yeah.
You felt it was kind of truncated at the last meeting.
Yeah, well, I think I'd wanted to talk through more website stuff at that time. But yes, I would like to talk about all of those things in January, February, probably. Website updates, definitely January. And I'll probably provide a progress report on the process documents then as well. Thank you. I'm just taking notes. Oh, and obviously the director review process we'll have to talk about, right? Wasn't that something we discussed?
All the BOPIC stuff, yeah.
Yeah, BOPEC. Yeah, there's a lot, as usual. But hey, we took our big one off the plate. Yes, Vice President.
Yeah, and then as far as the BOPIC, the letter to the appointing authorities doesn't require the legal approval, so that can be, we don't think we have to wait on that one, right?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, let's move to public comment.
No public comment.
Great. That's great to hear. It is, Commissioner Hayden Crowley.
I completely forgot to tell you this, which should have come up during the redistricting. I did get an inquiry from the Mission Local today asking me to call the reporter about the redistricting report, wanting my feedback because they had heard that I could potentially be opposed to it. So I didn't have time to call him. And I think that my comments, my public comments stand as any kind of response to that, but I did want to let you all know.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayden Crowley. Appreciate the transparency. Any other? Yes, Commissioner Dye.
The reporter, by the way, did get a hold of me, but mostly he had background questions, so.
Okay, the time is now 9:17 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Well done.
Happy holidays to everybody. That was impressive. Once again, President Stone.
President Stone, thank you very much for your organization. I told my husband, I was like, so